Hey, everybody, and welcome to Behind the Scenes, a podcast for the YouTube series Out of Frame. I'm your host, Sean Malone, creative director for the Foundation for Economic Education and creator of Out of Frame on YouTube. Here today in studio with Paul Nelson, who is our senior marketing manager and head of social media at FEE, and also Out of Frame Shorts editor. And of course, Jen Mafasanti, remotely from the great state of Utah. Jen co-writes our Out of Frame Shorts with me, and in fact, just very recently is the voice of an Out of Frame Shorts episode. This is a first, a major first, Jen, and it's really it's actually a big deal to me. I've only ever let one other person do a guest narration, so it's a huge deal.
Hey, I want one.
No. Earn it, Paul. Earn it.
I'm super excited about it. And for those of you who think that voiceover work is really easy and it's just talking into a microphone, I mean, yes, it is just talking into a microphone, but it is really, really difficult.
Yeah, I recorded another episode bright and early this morning. I started about, probably 7:50 or so. Got up about 7 to start working on this. I mean, I've been doing this for a while, and it is a lot harder than people think. Doing it in a way that's dynamic and interesting, and and also like when I first started Out of Frame too, I was trying to be very deliberate in the way that I approached the pacing and the rhythm of how I spoke, in a way that I'm not quite as much in real life, and I liked that for a little bit. But it was a little slow. And so I used to get comments with people who were like, oh, this guy's so slow. Just watch on 1.5 speed or whatever. And I was like, okay, but I'm doing this deliberately. So I kept doing that for a while. And I've kind of loosened up over the last few years, where now I'm a lot more, I try to be a little bit faster with my pacing, and just more dynamic in general, because it matters a great deal. But I think for your first, really kind of first time, I think you did a pretty good job. Mm-hmm. And like I said, there's only ever been one other narrator on an Out of Frame episode, and it was Arash, who was our editor for the features, because in a sort of similar way, because he wrote an episode and pitched it to me. And Jen obviously does co-writes on all of our shorts, but this one was more, I mean, for a lot of obvious reasons, it's just one that you can talk about that I just couldn't talk about in the same way. Not least of which because I haven't watched all of Handmaid's Tale.
One of the reasons.
It's a big one, but definitely not the only one. I don't know, Jen. I don't know if everybody's seen it yet, but we can tease it a little bit. You want to give a quick description of your Handmaid's Tale episode?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we've said, it's about the show on Hulu, The Handmaid's Tale. And yes, I have read the book because I'm me. And so the thing of it is about The Handmaid's Tale, you can't avoid talking about feminism when you're talking about the thematic elements of the show. And unfortunately, a lot of the people who've really latched on to the imagery of The Handmaid's Tale and the cautionary themes of The Handmaid's Tale have largely gotten it wrong. Not necessarily that it isn't about the importance of feminism, because it is, but they completely gloss over the collectivist horror show that is the fictional nation of Gilead in The Handmaid's Tale. Like, they have literal uniforms depending on what role they have been assigned by the state. And it's just a disaster. And yes, it is about the importance of feminism, but it's about the importance of individualist feminism, which is a nuance that is lost on a lot of people.
Yeah. That nuance, I think, is super important. And it's one that I've been talking about for a long time on Out of Frame, and been talking, especially like between the Brave New World episode and, of course, the Justice League episode, where I very explicitly talked about collectivism versus individualism. But even on, it should be out. Yeah, by the time you'll hear this, the new episode of I think maybe out or maybe just be coming out. I think, but the episode that I recorded today should be coming out fairly soon. And I'm going to talk a lot about the same kinds of issues, like collectivism versus individualism. And I know I talk about it a lot, but I think it's super important because it's something that even still, I read through all these comments on YouTube and stuff, and people still miss the point all the time. I had somebody the other day say, yeah, but in an individualist world, wouldn't everybody just be out for themselves and never care about anybody else? Like, no, that's not what that means. It doesn't mean that you don't care about anybody else. It doesn't mean that you can't be part of a community. It means that you get to choose which communities you become a part of. And that's obviously been totally lost in The Handmaid's Tale, but it's lost in a lot of stuff. I mean, you see this in, tons of fiction, but you also see it in real life all the time, and so I don't know. It's interesting to me, like how that sort of misunderstanding still permeates everything. And I don't think that collectivist feminism has done us a service in that regard. I think the same way is true about the way that people talk about a lot of the kind of sensitive topics that, race and gender and ethnicity and all those kinds of things. And we talk about these things as if different groups of people are very monolithic. Like they're very, just like women are X, men are Y, and which is chromosomally not what I meant or intended on accident. But, like these kinds of things, they just do us all, I think, a disservice because they kind of force everybody into categories that don't really often make a lot of sense. It's a bummer.
I mean, we have time and time and again seen when you lump whole groups of people into a category, bad things happen.
Yeah. My wife and I were talking about this, probably this morning. I've been up long enough this morning that I've actually had conversations with people already. But we were talking about this, because she's been in a whole bunch of trainings. She works for a relatively large software company, and, they're doing what a lot of big corporate, entities are doing, and they're doing diversity trainings and like all of these kinds of things. And they just got a new DEI officer for the company, vice president of diversity, equity, inclusion or whatever. And they're going through all these things. And the way that they depict different groups of people, well, A, it's kind of insulting. And B, my wife is looking around at her friends at the company, and it's a diverse group of people in the term, using the terminology the way that they would use it. And none of them quite fit the profile, like some of her, black coworkers are, grew up very upper middle class. Some of her white coworkers did not. Some of her, other coworkers are from different parts of the world. I mean, Jen, we'll get into this in a second. Actually, I think this will be kind of a good segue into our film for the day. Is actually we're going to be talking about the new Disney movie Luca, which is set in Italy, and it's a very Italian film. And Jen's talked about this on the show before, but like your husband is Italian by way of Jamaica, which is a very strange thing. But you start actually talking to people as individuals, and you find that like skin color doesn't tell you very much. Like it really is not going to be a very good indicator of like what your experiences have been or where you come from, what culture you really, are a part of or whatever. I mean, none of that stuff is very useful. And yet all of these sort of diversity trainings seem to be geared towards hammering home this idea that we can lump people into these large amorphous groups. And it's doesn't seem like an improvement to me.
No.
At all.
No.
But let's talk about Luca, because Luca's an interesting movie to me in a lot of ways. It's actually the first Disney movie I've seen in a long time that doesn't really have a huge political message, which was kind of nice. It's really kind of a sweet story about some kids which feels like a little bit of a throwback to me. I just feel like everything has been cramming one ideological message after the next in a thing. But Jen, I want you to talk about it first, just because I'm kind of intrigued by your take on it as somebody who's got a lot of connection to Italy and to Italian culture. So, yeah, take it away.
All right. Well, first of all, the premise of Luca is that in this tiny little seacoast town near Genoa, there is a population of sea monsters that live in the ocean nearby. And the local townsfolk are terrified of them. They think that the monsters are going to eat them and it's going to be a disaster. Okay. They're just terrified of them. They hate them. They want them to go away. And then there's Luca, who is a sea monster. And he's a kid and a fish herder for his family, which was adorable.
Doesn't seem like it would work at all.
Because of course, the fish are deeply stupid, like sheep are.
I mean, yeah.
So he's been told by his parents his whole life that the land monsters, humans, are out to get him, and they hate him, and it's dangerous on the surface, and he's to never, ever go there. And he sort of accidentally gets brought up to the surface by another sea monster who has learned to live on the land, because when they come out of the water and they dry off, they turn human.
It's an interesting facet of this movie that doesn't
not explained
at all.
Nope.
They're
That's what they do.
Purely interchangeable the minute you are above water. In fact, there's a whole sequence of him kind of diving up and below the surface, and it's human fish, or really kind of an iguana. I feel like iguana is like the best analog to them, because they're not exactly fish creatures. They're more kind of amphibious, lizardy
sea monsters.
They're not very scary sea monsters.
No, not really. But this is also not set in present day. So,
yeah.
And you can tell because there's subtle hints in the town. Like there are signs that list prices, and it's the lira symbol, not the euro symbol, in front of the denomination. So, like the Vespa that Luca and his friend are coveting is 9,000 lira, which is about $20.
Yeah, that seems unlikely, but yes.
Oh well, if this is like in the late 60s, early 70s, then that's not an insignificant amount of money, especially in rural Italy. So it's a really cute show, really cute movie, and it's largely about friendship and curiosity and overcoming your fear of the unknown. Yeah. So I thought it was adorable and delightful, and it seemed very much designed for first and second generation Italian immigrants. Specifically, it's like a weirdly niche audience there, but it really works. There's some really funny plays on words, if you understand Italian, that are just hilarious. And my husband, who is a first generation Italian immigrant, he was born in Chicago. English is his second language. Spent most of his formative years in Jamaica with his father's family. And he thought it was a riot. He loved it.
It's a really cute movie. For me, there are things that and I'll get into some of my sort of criticism. All my criticisms are kind of like they're not that important, really. Like it's a cute movie, and it's an enjoyable watch, and I liked a lot of the themes. I like I said, I really appreciated that I didn't feel like I was being beaten over the head by any kind of really aggressive political message, especially not something that was like really modern day or anything like that. It really is a story about friends and finding friends in sort of obscure places, and also kind of, oddballs coming together a little bit too, because which is, a lot of kids' movies. A lot of, those are kind of about, if you feel like an outcast or you feel like you don't quite fit in, finding the people that you fit in with, which is really great. I can't help but think that it's like, it's not that groundbreaking in any way. Like I've become a little bit accustomed to Pixar, especially, even Raya. We talked about Raya and water and all of that kind of stuff. I can't say that there was anything in this movie where I was like, oh my goodness, that is a massive leap forward in animation. That's a massive leap forward in character design. That's there's some technical achievement that they've had here. So I didn't really feel like there was anything about it that like really stood out in that regard. And I couldn't help but feeling like certain themes have been done better in other Pixar movies. The friendship theme, look, it's going to be hard to beat Toy Story. It's, they're a little bit different themes, but like there are some other movies that Pixar has done that are going to be really, really hard to overcome. A kid, especially a fish boy, finding his way into adulthood. Nemo kind of handled that territory pretty well. And so it's hard to,
Nemo wasn't about Nemo.
No, it's really about Marlin. But, that idea of like a kid branching out, a kid who is more curious than afraid, right? Mm-hmm. And then honestly, Marlin needing to find the same in himself, right? So there's a lot of these pieces. I'm not saying it's like the entire movie is identical or anything, but also you can find the Little Mermaid comparisons in this too, in pretty obvious ways. But like, it's not that they're exactly the same. Like this definitely is a different movie than a lot of these movies that I'm talking about, but it's just all these little pieces I just feel like just didn't quite come together for me. That said, these are pretty minor critiques. Mm-hmm. I did find it to be, and also part of it may just be my expectations coming in, which I'll be honest, were kind of low. Pixar and Disney have not, they've not, for me at least, they've not had like a stellar track record lately. So I kind of went into this not having high expectations, and it was cute, but I didn't find it to be very compelling comparatively. I don't know. Maybe you have a different take.
So slightly different. I think I land somewhere in between you two. And what's interesting is hearing you guys talk about this, I find myself gravitating more towards Jin's side, where I keep thinking about because right after I got done watching, I'm like, that was fine. That was good. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, fine. But then like my wife, that's literally the word that my wife used when we finished watching. She was like, that movie was fine.
But I think what is surprising me, because like you, I went into this movie with very low expectations, but what surprised me the most is that it's staying with me.
Really? Okay.
And I'm finding myself identifying more and more with Luca, especially. Mm-hmm. Just that relationship, that close friendship with the other boy, and then a girl comes into the picture.
Yeah.
And that's so relatable for me. And it's I think I disagree with you on the groundbreaking visuals and all that.
Really?
The scene, this just struck me. I actually said wow when it came up, but it was the scene at the sunset when Alberto revealed himself to, I can't remember her name, but their friend. And Julia. Yeah. That sunset scene on the beach there looked amazing. And it was just absolutely gorgeous. But I also really liked the character design. It was 2D-ish.
Yeah, it's a little bit more old school. It's more cartoony than a lot of things. I mean, certainly, like if you compare this to Raya, the kind of the most recent thing that they've done, Raya's much more.
Everything but the characters is like realistic.
Yes, and the characters in Raya are much more human shaped than a lot of characters. They're not, obviously they're a little bit more anime kind of vibe to it, but like they're not cartoony in the way that this is
definitely cartoony and I love the message. It's fun. It's charming. The characters are relatable, and I saw some complaints on the internets about the stakes not being high enough.
They're not high stakes.
But you know what? That's okay.
Yeah. So I've thought about that a little bit for sure, because so I'm going to, I guess I'll spoil this, but this isn't really, because again, the stakes aren't very high, but the core drama, apart from, whether or not the townspeople will accept the sea monsters, as people. But the core drama is basically just a triathlon. I mean, it's a kids triathlon that this town has, where the prize is enough money. It's enough money to buy a really garbage version of a Vespa. It's like the closest thing that these kids are going to get to a Vespa, like an actual Vespa. And actually, I did kind of like that about the movie, is that they're pining over this beautiful, and especially the kind of, gosh, I forget the kid's name now, but the antagonist kid, I should just look it up. But the antagonist kid in this has a Vespa.
Ercole.
What's it?
Ercole.
Ercole,
Which
yes.
is the Italian version of Hercules.
Oh, all right. So Ercole has a Vespa, and it's his pride and joy, and they love that, and they've seen posters, and they love that. And then when Alberto, who's Luca's buddy, finds them a Vespa that they can actually afford with the winnings of this triathlon, it's just the most beat up, rusted out piece of garbage. And yet the way that they depict it is like gleaming, this is the perfect vehicle for them, and it's just beautiful and whatever. I do think that was great. I also think that was well set up, because Luca and Alberto, as they are forming their friendship, are basically like building, a makeshift DIY Vespa out of junk that Alberto has been collecting. And it keeps falling apart, and they're trying to jump it off a cliff, and it's, none of it's really going very well, but they're having a great time. So I like that part of it quite a lot. But yeah, I mean, the stakes are pretty low. I mean, the stakes are, Ercole is...
They are life and death.
He's a jerk, and we should beat him in this minor physical contest.
And eating contest.
Yes.
There's
This is the greatest triathlon of all time. Swimming, biking, and eating.
Pasta eating.
The
pasta to me looked amazing.
It did look very good.
It did. The pasta al pesto looked amazing.
But see, the pasta part of it is why Julia has never managed to defeat her arch nemesis this entire time that she's been. Every summer she comes back to this town, and she's been trying to win the contest against this jerk for years, apparently, a couple years anyway. But where she falls down is she does not have a group. She's not competing with a team. She's competing just by herself. And so she can do the biking and the swimming, and it's great, but then she has to do the pasta eating. And because she has to do the pasta eating, she can't do the physical stuff without throwing up, which...
The reversal of fortune, as they say in the hot dog contest, eating contest world.
Yeah. So, but that actually, that like scans, that makes a lot of sense narratively. And I like that a lot, because you couldn't really, it's not really wise to do a pasta eating contest and then get on a bike and have to ride as fast as you can and then go swimming. I'm not a big fan of the like wait an hour after you eat until you go swimming rule, but like eating contest changes the game a little bit in that sense. Anyway, it's cute. I don't have a problem with that at all. I think that part of it is real nice. And I especially think that like we definitely live in a world where there's just, even kids movies are just so cynical and dark.
Yeah.
And
this is a movie about
Yeah.
these kids' best summer of their lives, and it was just fun.
Yeah. Well, I like that aspect of it. But okay, so let's talk about the other piece of this, which is like the bias part, right? So this is, if you could say there's a, philosophical theme in it, that's sort of relevant to what we want to talk about a lot of the time. I mean, yeah, there is a little bit of. I mean, it's funny because like really the most of the drama really is this bike race or this triathlon, but like there is also a constant undercurrent of whether or not Luca and Alberto are going to be discovered as sea monsters. It's very convenient for them that when they're dry, they just look like human boys. So that's kind of an odd. And this kind of gets me back to my critical stuff too, though, because it really is. Like there are some of those things that I'm just like, it's a little bit of an odd choice.
That's the only thing. I wish they would have, even just a throwaway line that was wrong by like Alberto that explained why they did it.
Yeah,
it would help.
But see, I think part of what really kind of throws it off is that like Luca's mom and dad don't realize that this is an option. Like they've been alive for a long time, and this is a spoiler. Other sea monsters live on land as well.
And his grandmother goes every week.
Including his own grandmother. So, like, if that's the case, how did the message not spread far and wide among the sea monstering? Also, how, if you're a sea monster, like, in this world, have you never made it up to the surface ever?
I mean, the last year we see what fear can do to people. So if you're beat over the head with, you go up there, you die.
Yeah.
Your entire life.
I guess.
It's a big hurdle to get over.
Yeah, except for then again, you've still got a bunch of other people who've made it up there and who've come back, or who go every weekend, as you said.
But they keep it secret, I think. I don't know.
Why would you keep it secret? It doesn't make. I mean, that stuff is the stuff for me that I'm like, all right, okay. Why are we doing that? It's fine. But yeah, I mean, that's the big mystery, right? Like, will Luca get discovered, and then once he is discovered, and of course, it's not a if, it's a when in a movie like this. So. When they get discovered, what happens, right? Like, are the townspeople going to chase after them with pitchforks, or, and to some extent, I will say, to the movie's credit, like they don't go full on humanity's evil and pitchfork wielding, and they're going to go after. It would be a weird shift in tone if you did. Hey, greatest summer of your life. Now run for your lives, kids. The humans are coming after you with guns and pitchforks. And, I don't think that would work super well in any case. But I don't know. I mean, I think, Jen, you brought this up about friendship kind of bridging the gap between people. And I think that's a really good point with this movie.
Yeah. So Giulia's father, Massimo, basically takes in Luca and Alberto for the duration of the story so that they can train with Giulia to win the triathlon this year. And Luca and Alberto help out on Massimo's fishing boat as well. And they're extremely useful because they tell him where the fish are at any given point in the day. They're like, oh no, it's too warm to be fishing here right now. All the fish are over there in that deeper bit. So
no, you know what? That was actually that's actually a standout bit for me too, because they said the fish think that part of the sea is haunted. It's not really, but the fish think it is.
We don't think so.
We don't think so, but the fish think. Because again, the fish are.
Well, I mean, they know. So yeah, it was delightful, and so Massimo actually has this reputation of being like a really good sea monster hunter. He's got like trophies up on the wall. He's got like the harpoons just like sort of on display. He's a taciturn kind of guy, but he's known for he's a real big dude. But he's known for hunting sea monsters. And so the boys are, understandably very nervous around Massimo. But once they loosen up and start expressing their personalities a little bit more, like Massimo understands that these are just kids, Yeah. They're doing their best. They're trying hard. They want to be helpful.
And I think he believes that they're orphans at this point, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Or runaways or something like that. And he's doing the kind thing and giving them a place to stay and feeding them and giving them work to do so that they feel useful and they have that experience. And it's really great. Like Massimo is a fantastic father figure.
Yeah.
in this movie. And spoiler, at the very end, when it's revealed that yes, Alberto and Luca are sea monsters, Massimo comes forward and everybody's like, oh, it's gonna go down because Massimo kills sea monsters, and he's got to be mad that they've just been in his house all summer and he didn't know. But he's like, no, I know who these boys are. They're Alberto and Luca,
Yeah.
and they're good boys. And
they
who
and they
wants to
won.
fight about it?
And they won.
And they won.
Good boy.
So is it like
Yeah.
no one's going to argue with Massimo about it?
There's a lot of stuff about the Massimo character. It's very small. It's sort of a small part in a lot of ways, but a really important one. And I think one of the things, he's got one arm. And I think you don't get a lot of moments in a story like this to explore the personality of your sort of side characters. And like that one moment of him saying, oh, it's bitten off by a great, evil shark or whatever, is no, I was just born this way. Like just having that little moment of like, oh, he can tell a joke, right? Oh, this big scary guy, he'll tell stories, but then he's just joking around.
Yeah.
That's a great way to handle that, because obviously you get that he cares about his daughter, that you get kind of right away, but it's not like it reminds me a little bit, and a lot of this actually, now I'm thinking about it, especially the dad kind of reminds me of, I don't remember the first name, but Flint Lockwood's dad in Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. He's also a stoic giant fisherman, and can't really quite connect, but cares, and trying to figure out like, oh, Julia, do you really want to enter this contest again? Like, are we really doing this every time doing this? But he's there. He's gonna let her do it. She's gonna go for it, and he's gonna be there for it. Which, you're right. I mean, that's a great dad. It's a great dad role model.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm talking myself into this movie a little bit.
No,
more as well.
I love that character. The cat popped up. You just need a little chuckle.
The cat is like a spitting image of Massimo, same mustache, and just
Machiavelli. That's the cat's name.
Machiavelli. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's good. That
It's good.
That
I
stuff
also
is
really
good
like the jokes of the cheese saints. Whenever Julia would get frustrated, she'd be like, Santa mozzarella. It was just so funny.
Yeah, that was the Gargonzola. That one got me.
I don't know. I mean, so I was prepared to kind of come into this thinking like this is kind of a B- for me, and I'll elevate. I still think it's a B, because I still think like there's a lot of other movies that I've seen that have, they've hit me in the feels a lot harder. There's movies that have like, really explored some of the themes a little bit better. But I will say on a trend of Disney and Pixar doing things that I feel like are really, they're really disjointed movies that like are trying to be too many things to too many people, and which are a lot of times really mired in some message that they want to push rather than telling a great story and making the message. If you're going to make a message into a movie, you can always do that, but like to tell a story where the message is clear, not smashing me over the head with the message. I feel like that Disney's done that a lot lately with a lot of their movies. And so I don't know. This was kind of refreshing to me. I mean, it's not something that it's probably I'm gonna rewatch a ton. Maybe never. I don't know. But it's not bad.
Yeah, I have a feeling I'll be rewatching this. The boys have watched it. They loved it. They absolutely loved it. So I'm sure it's gonna be on repeat. So maybe talk to me in like 6 months. See if I still like it.
Jen, did your boys watch it? Because your boys are a little bit older, but they also have context for Italy stuff a little bit more.
Yeah, we watched it with the boys, and they thought it was just the best. They loved it, and it was so fun. It was so lighthearted. Andrew had to pause the movie a couple of times. Andrew's my husband. Had to pause a couple of times to just laugh at some of the Italian puns and like pointing out just tiny little details that hit him right in the childhood, like the playing card that Luca finds in the sea in the opening scenes. It's like a traditional old school deck of Italian playing cards. Like he played cards with those, and the suit is the suit of cups, which I think they use in place of clubs. And it was just very, very authentic in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And like he's seen those old women like walking down the street before. He like that's so accurate. He loved it so much, and I don't think I would give it an A as far as this is concerned, but I'd give it a solid 89.
Solid 89, just on the
You know,
cusp.
you know what?
B plus, B plus plus.
The credit
honestly.
drawings, that should bump it up to an A for you.
The credit drawings
So
are pretty
cute,
nice.
so cute.
The one where Massimo gave Alberto a knife.
Yeah.
Somebody was cutting onions.
Mhm.
He got a
Did you
dad.
see? Boy, sorry, this is a total tangent, but I saw like a video popped across my feed the other day of like a dad who was a chef teaching his boy, couldn't have been more than like 8, like speed chopping onions. And like you look at this and you go like, oh my gosh, that boy is gonna, because that's sort of what we're kind of conditioned to think now, is that you hand a kid a knife or a gun or anything that's like a dangerous object, and they're gonna really injure themselves, or they're gonna do something horrible. This kid just destroyed this thing, and he was great. And then the look of pride on his dad's face, because he was like, okay, I'm gonna show you. Went through the whole thing. His boy took the knife, did the whole thing, and the dad's just like, yes, yeah, like he just did it. That he'd been teaching him that since, for a couple years or whatever, teaching him basic knife skills and all that kind of stuff. And it's nice to see that sometimes, like nice to see a dad like really like get in there and teach a kid how to do stuff. And also we're so afraid of everything. We're so afraid of a kid in those moments.
Got to protect them, right?
Yeah. But the other thing, and I guess I'll bring this up, and this is kind of like last minute, because I do kind of want to wrap this part of the discussion up. We're going to get into I'll kind of tease this a little bit first. We're going to get into a bonus section for those who are kind of new to the show. Our Patreon and Subscribe-Star supporters will stick around. We'll do a little bit more, and we'll do some Q&A after this. But, for everybody else, if you're not a subscriber to the show, if you're not, supporting Out of Frame on Patreon or Subscribe-Star, it's patreon.com/outoframeshow or subscribestar.com/outoframeshow. One of the things is you get access to private channels on Discord. There's a bunch of stuff. But before I, wrap this up and get into it, I do want to say something about, and it's kind of brings it back to the beginning of this and talking about diversity and inclusion and all of those kinds of things. I think where a lot of those terms have gotten out of hand, there is some really good aspects to this. And I think one of them, especially from a storytelling standpoint, is the authenticity of bringing somebody in to write and direct a story that really understands the culture that they're telling the story from the perspective that they're telling the story, and so this film was directed by Enrico Casarosa. I think it was written also by him. The core story was by him. Obviously, Disney and Pixar have a pretty big team that works on these kinds of things. But it's very, very clear. And to be fair, Disney has done this for decades, like literally decades. Pixar has done this from the very beginning of its existence, where they've taken a lot of great care to go embed themselves in the culture that they're setting their story in and trying to find all those things, like the playing cards and stuff like that. That is a beautiful use of that idea, right? It's like a really beautiful use of like, we should be open to telling stories from anywhere around the world, but if we're going to do that, it's a fantastic thing to bring in people who really, really know that region, that culture, the language, the history. But again, Pixar has been doing this forever, They do huge, sometimes very long, multi-month retreats into the places that they're going to spend their time. You know, I mean, Disney talked about, you talked about this with Moana. When Moana came out, they spent, not that this is just a terrible burden on anybody, but they spent, months in Hawaii.
Tough,
difficult job, right? But spent months in Hawaii trying to figure out exactly these elements. What's going to be included, what makes it authentic, what doesn't. Where this gets to be a mess is where we start talking about how these things, we need to set quotas, or we need to make sure that this story, this story is filled with these kinds of people or those kinds of people. That's not the right rubric, right? Like, the right rubric is, do you understand? Do you care? Is it something that you're passionate about? And you can see that in Luca, for sure. And I think that's a great thing about this. So I don't know. I kind of wanted to say that as part of this as well.
Maybe Disney could take a trip, a retreat to a galaxy far, far away.
That would be
figure that one out.
That would be nice. Oh man. All right. So on that note, we're going to end the main episode here. But if you are a subscriber on Patreon or Subscribestar, stick around, and we are going to have a little bit more coming at you. We're going to do some Q&A. For everybody else, thank you so much for listening or watching. Do subscribe to Out of Frame on YouTube. Check us out on Instagram. We're sort of on TikTok now. We're getting a little bit. Paul's going to record some TikToks later today.
Content is coming,
sort of. We're gonna work that out. But Twitter. Where else, Paul? Facebook,
and our email.
Yes, join the Out of Frame email. I'm so proud of this. I'm not going to say it. I made a recommendation in this last email that we put out that quoted my wife from several years ago. And I think, not to talk her up too much, but like, she's one of the funniest people I know. And I think the email is worth it just for her description of He-Man. That's one of the funniest things I've ever heard in my life. And I've included it in the email for special people who have joined that list. So join the list. I think that's, what is it? fee.org/OOF-newsletter.
Yep.
But anyway, for everybody else, thank you so much for listening and watching. We'll see you next time.